I entitled this talk, Can I Really Change? Are Mistakes as Catalysts for Transformation? Sometimes we may doubt that, but let's see, is it even possible? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, Chapter 72, Text 20. Yo nityena sharirena satam geyam yasho dhruvam nachinoti swayam kalpa savacha shocha evasa. He is indeed to be censured and pitied, who, although able to do so, fails to achieve with his temporary body the lasting fame glorified by great saints. Text 21. Harishchandro ranti deva unchavritti shibir bali vyada kapoto bahavo yadruvena dhruvam gata. Harishchandra, Rantideva, Unchavritti Mudgala, Shibi, Bali, the legendary hunter and pigeon, and many others have attained the permanent by means of the impermanent. Purport by followers of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Here Lord Krishna and the two Pandavas are pointing out to Jarasandha that one can use the temporary material body to achieve a permanent situation in life. Because Jarasandha was a materialist, they appealed to his natural interest in the heavenly planets, where life lasts so long that it appears permanent to people on earth. Srila Sridhar Swami briefly summarizes the history of the personalities mentioned in this verse. To pay off his debts to Vishwamitra, Harishchandra sold everything he had, including his wife and children. Yet, even after attaining the status of a Chandala, he did not become discouraged. Thus, he went to heaven together with all the inhabitants of Ayodhya. Rantideva, after going without even water for 48 days, somehow obtained some food and water, but then some beggars came and he gave it all away to them. In this way, he attained Brahmaloka. Mudgala followed the practice of gathering grains left behind in the fields after the harvest. Yet he was still hospitable toward uninvited guests, even after his family had been suffering in poverty for 6 months. Thus, he also went to Brahmaloka. To protect a pigeon who had taken shelter of him, King Shibi gave his own flesh to a hawk and attained heaven. Bali Maharaj gave all his property Lord Hari when the Lord disguised himself as a dwarf, Brahmana Vamanadev, and so Bali gained the Lord's personal association. The pigeon and his mate gave their own flesh to the hunter as a show of hospitality, and thus they were taken to heaven in a celestial airplane. When the hunter understood their situation in the mode of goodness, he also became renounced, and thus he gave up hunting and went off to perform severe austerities. Because he was freed of all sins, after his body burned to death in a forest fire, he was elevated to heaven. Thus many personalities have attained enduring life on higher planets by means of the temporary material body. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of a spiritual master who has opened my darkened eyes and filled my heart with transcendental knowledge. I further offer my obeisances to all of you assembled Vaishnavas and seek your kind blessings and permission that we may read Srimad Bhagavatam with you today. So this chapter is about Krishna, Arjuna, and Bhima going to Magadha to defeat this king Jarasandha. Now, this story in and of itself is quite intriguing. Jarasandha could not be defeated because he is a mystically strong demon. The name Jarasandha itself has a story. There was a witch, you can see in this corner here. There's a witch in Magadha. Her name was Jara. And once she found this baby that was in two pieces, right down the middle, and she joined those pieces back together mystically using a magical joint. So the Sandha means like a joint or a connection where things connect. Like we say the word Sandhya. Sandhya is where, 2 points are connected. Like when there's a day transitioning to the night, that Sandhya is called the evening. So like that. So Jarasandha basically means the one who was joined by Jara, joined together. So Krishna knew that the only way to defeat Jarasandha was to unjoin him at the point of weakness. So the stories in the Bhagavatam, they're quite amazing. And in today's verse, we find Krishna gives references to some other characters whose stories were well known by everyone at that time. In other words, he did not need to actually tell the story. He just gave their names to make his point that giving generously is universally glorious. So let's go to the next one. So I'm going to focus on this one story, the first name that Krishna mentioned. It's not very commonly told, although I've heard it several times, the story, different variations of it. But Krishna mentions his name, Harishchandra. So Harishchandra was a pious king. He was born in the lineage of Ikshvaku Vansh. Ikshvaku Vansh is the lineage of Lord Ram. Ikshvaku is also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. Right in the beginning of the 4th chapter, Krishna mentions how he spoke to sun god Vivaswan, who spoke to Manu Ikshvaku Bravit, that Ikshvaku, the son of Manu. So in the son lineage, very great king. Now, this king, Harishchandra, he wanted a son and he wasn't getting any children. And so he prayed to this deity he used to worship, a deity of Varuna. Varuna is this god of water. And Varuna actually appeared to him and says, I'll give you a son, no problem, you'll get a son. But as soon as the son is born, or pretty much right after, you have to give him to me. Harishchandra wanted the son so badly. He said, yeah, sure, I'll sacrifice. He said, you have to sacrifice him to me. Okay, fine. So when the son was born, then Varuna came, okay, you have your son, you're happy you have your son, now sacrifice him. And the king said, no, well, you can't really sacrifice a son until he had at least his teeth, right? When his teeth come out, then I'll sacrifice, it's not even a full human being right now. So the Varuna said, okay, fine. He comes back later when his teeth are in. He says his teeth are in now. He said, yeah, but these are just a temporary teeth. I got to wait for the next set of teeth to come in. These teeth are just going to fall out anyway. So how about you wait until then? Varuna's like, he's getting a little impatient. Said, fine. So after a few years, he comes back. Okay, his main teeth are, his temporary teeth are gone. His full set of teeth has come in. How about now? And he kept making excuses like this. And Varuna was just exasperated. And he said, you have to give me your son. And then Harishchandra said, well, my son found out that I was going to sacrifice him, so he ran away. And it's true, his son Rohit actually ran away, and I can't find him anywhere. So Varuna was so upset, he just walked out. It's like, I don't know what to do with you. You're a deceitful man who doesn't keep his word. you are not eligible to be considered in the lineage of Ikshvaku Vansha or this Raghuvansh, who are known to give their word. Where is your honor? How are you taking this deception? And so this king developed dropsy. It's a disease where stomach becomes really big. It's very painful. And what happened then? After a while, he was very morose. His son came back, and his son felt sorry for him. And then the king said, "Look, I really wish I'd not deceived Varuna." So he prayed to Varuna again. Varuna came back, and he saw how much this king is suffering, and he said, "This is your karmic reaction for being deceitful." And the king said, "No, you know what? I'm sorry, I should not have done it. Here, you can have my son." And Varuna said, "No, you know what? You suffered enough this disease. You keep your son. It's no problem. In fact, I'm pleased. I can just see you have strong determination. You've made up your mind never be deceitful again. And so I'm going to cure you of your disease." And so he blessed him, and he kept his son, and everything was very nice. Now, one day in the court of Indra, Indra is asking, "Hey, are there any honest and truthful men who are free from deceit in this world on earth?" I don't think so. At that point, sage Vashishta, he told Indra, no, there is one man. It's King Harishchandra. Now, Indra had heard the story of Varuna and all that, and he said, "No way, Harishchandra." He went back on his word. He cheated Varuna. He didn't fulfill his promise. And to this, the sage Vashishta replied, "Look, every sinner has a future. Every sage has a past. So Harishchandra has actually like with great determination, given up all deceitfulness. He's a pure and honest man now. And I can be so confident saying that if I'm proven wrong, I'll open my jata, my locks of hair, and I'll walk around without any clothes on." That's how confident I am that he's a pure-hearted, honest person. Now, when all this discussion was going on, separately, Narada was talking to Vishwamitra. So, Vishwamitra is a very famous angry sage. And Narada challenged Vishwamitra. He said, "Do you think Vishwamitra, this Harishchandra, will be able to keep his vow of truthfulness?" And Vishwamitra told Narada, "Hey, look, if King Harishchandra can maintain his vow of truthfulness, I will give him half of all my pious credits that I've accumulated through my tapasya in my whole life. And on top of that, I'll give him a blessing that he'll become a renowned king." So Vishwamitra and Indra and all the others are set out to prove that it's possible to corrupt Harishchandra. So it started out like this. So Vishwamitra sent some of his followers to the king, Harishchandra, and told him, "There's this sacrifice you have to do. The Bahu Savarna Yagya." And that is very qualified to it. Now, Harishchandra knew what the sacrifice is about. And he made the promise that he will conduct the sacrifice. So one of the conditions was that the king has to distribute large amounts of wealth after the sacrifice. And he has to give away whatever anyone asks for. Any Brahmana asks for anything, even if it's very painful to give it, he has to give it. Otherwise, sacrifice won't be complete. And so at the end of the sacrifice, he gave away much wealth and food and cows, the poor, the needy, and all the Brahmanas. And everybody is really pleased. Except, of course, Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra wanted to test the king to see how far he'll go. So he approached the king. And he said that, "I want the amount of wealth that when a man stands on the back of an elephant and tosses a coin up to a certain height, I want a pile of gold and jewels that high." And immediately Harishchandra said, "Yes, absolutely." And he got this massive amount of wealth from the treasury. He piled it up right in front of Vishwamitra and said, "This is all yours." Now Vishwamitra was kind of disappointed. He was bewildered by this generosity, but he was like, okay. He just left the wealth there. He said, okay, you know what? You hold on to this. I'll pick it up at a later time. So Harishchandra won this round of tests. Now, Vishwamitra, he was determined to kind of corrupt Harishchandra. So he created two mystical apsaras, very beautiful heavenly dancers, girls, to seduce the king. But he did not fall for the temptations. And he refused their proposal that he marry them, accept them as his wives. So this is another defeat for Vishwamitra. Then Vishwamitra sent some mystical animals, like dangerous animals, into his kingdom to harass his people. Harishchandra, as his duty, was to fight these animals, and he was fighting them out, drove them out of the town. Into the forest, he went fighting. And in the forest, he came across this ashram of the sage, Vishwamitra ashram. And now the sage was very angry because he kept getting defeated. And he shouted at the king that, oh, you killed my animals and you turned down these two girls, and what's going on? You're really, really bad. So to placate his anger, the king said, you know what? I'm so sorry. But to apologize, I'm going to give you my whole kingdom. And so he took the sage back to the kingdom. In front of everybody, he signed off. And his whole kingdom now belongs to sage Vishwamitra. And after handing it over, the sage said, well, that means everything you own, including your jewels, give me all that. So he gave him all the jewels, and he was put out of the kingdom. Then as he was heading out, Vishwamitra said, hey, by the way, you need to give me that pile of wealth that I left in your safekeeping. Like, wait, I've given you everything now, the kingdom. No, but the other pile of wealth but it's within the kingdom. I don't care. I don't want to hear anything. I want the other pile of wealth. So now he was in debt. He had no money. It's just him, his wife, and his son. He didn't have any jewels even on his own body. So the king went to Kashi. Kashi is Varanasi, Banaras. And he thought he'll work, he'll collect some of money and worked in, he'll get a loan, worked in, and repaid, and this way he can pay off Vishwamitra. So Vishwamitra said, fine, you can do that. But even while that was happening, Vishwamitra created so many troubles for them, and they suffered great amount of trauma. So when they reached Banaras, they went to the temple of Lord Shiva, Vishweshwar, and praying, how will we clear our debts? And his wife Taramati, she suggested, why don't you sell me? You can sell me and our son to servitude. We can become slaves of somebody. And this way you can start paying the debt back. And this Harishchandra was shocked. He could not even think of doing this, but she insisted. And so even this, he was so shocked, but he couldn't say no to her, to this great descendant of Lord Ram, mighty lineage, this great king. He had to sell his wife and son. And he wandered from street to street. And one Brahmin, seeming a little interested, he said, okay, fine. I'll buy her, but I can't pay too much money. This wife, she looks too old, and the son, he looks really weak. So he haggled with him, and he got a little cash. And the king got this money, and he paid this money to this servant of Vishwamitra who was following them. His name was Nakshatraka. And he said, okay, so you can take this money, give it back to Vishwamitra. Of course, this didn't quite clear the whole loan. There's still a large part of the cash remained unpaid. So he had to pay it back within 48 days. That was part of the deal. Otherwise, he would be in default. So then he started selling himself on the street. I'm the king of Ikshvaku dynasty, and I am offering myself for sale. Then one man offered to buy him. His name was Veerabahu. He was an outcast. He was in charge of the dead bodies in the burning ghat. He was also in charge of being the executioner for the king. It was like a really most fallen kind of job. And he was the slave of this person, of Veerabahu. So Veerabahu said, okay, what is your price? And the king said, well, I need a pile of wealth that, my man sent an elephant and throws a coin up. It needs to be that high. And this Veerabahu said, fine, And he actually produced the money and he gave it to Nakshatraka. And that cleared all his debts. And Nakshatraka was just amazed at this amount. How does this guy even get it? And he was also kind of saddened that his master, his guru Vishwamitra, was torturing such a pure, noble king. But he gave the money to Vishwamitra. And this made Vishwamitra even more angry and upset because he had never failed in any of his challenges, that he really wanted to win this to show how bad human beings can be. So Vishwamitra made things even worse. And the Brahmana who had bought Taravati and her son, he started torturing them because this Brahman was actually just kind of like an expansion of Vishwamitra. And he would be starving them, he'd be scolding them. And one day this boy, the Rohitashva, he went to the forest to gather wood. And he was bitten by a snake. And he died. Little boy. And his mother found out. She was so heartbroken that her son was the only solace, and this is just gone. He's just gone. She felt that she was all alone now, so she took the son's body to the cremation ground. And she didn't have any money for the firewood, so she went to the forest to get firewood and brought the wood to the burning ghats. And of course, but at this point, she couldn't even recognize him. He couldn't recognize her. And he told her, "Hey, why are you putting this body over here?" And she said, "Well, I need to burn him, and I have the wood." "Well, you can't do it because you got to pay for even using this spot." And so he took the body and tossed it aside because that's what he was supposed to do. That he was told this is how you're supposed to treat people and deal with them. That was his deal. So she was crying and beseeching, and she didn't recognize him. He didn't recognize her. And she said, "I have no money, couldn't pay." And he said, "Okay, well, there's a Mangal Sutra, the necklace of your marriage. You pawn that and get some money from that." So she's going through so much pain. And she's trying to get her Mangal Sutra pawned. Now that same night, some bandits had kidnapped a prince in that area, separate one. And they had tied him up and they'd taken his jewels and they basically stabbed him, and that boy was dying. So Taramati thought, "Oh my God, that sounds like my son. Maybe that is my son. Maybe he came back to life." And so she went and she saw that, "Oh my God, this person has passed away." And she was holding him and was really crying and missing her son as well. And what happened? The the soldiers of the kingdom, they saw her, and they said, "Oh my God, you killed this prince?" She said, "No, I didn't kill him." "Well, it looks like you did." And so they took her in front of the king, and she was just at this point so disheveled and numb. She wasn't even in a position to explain her situation. And the king, even though he felt sorry for the looks and all that, he said she has to be executed for a crime of killing the prince. And so he ordered Veerabahu, who was the executioner, "Okay, you have to kill this woman now because she's being sentenced to death." And Veerabahu, he is his employee, new employee, said, "Okay, well, you do it." So he told Harishchandra that you got to kill this woman. So he has the axe. And so Taramati, she is there putting her head on the gallows, and he's about to kill her. And she looked skyward and she prayed. She prayed that, "My dear Lord, please protect my husband Harishchandra." And that's when Harishchandra realized that, my God, this woman, this is my wife. And she prayed for Harishchandra. She even prayed for the glory of Vishwamitra, that may nothing bad happen to Vishwamitra, who was the person who was actually torturing them. And then she said, "Okay, I'm ready to die. Now you can cut my head off." And hearing these words, Harishchandra was so shocked. He saw, this is my wife. And this is the same woman who brought that boy to the crematorium. That was my son. And I didn't even let her burn his body. Then he realized, you know what? I am the slave and servant to Virbahu, and I have to follow his orders, and I have to kill this woman. He has tears in his eyes. He raised the sword, the axe, and he prepared to bring it down his wife's neck. At that point, the sun was just about to come up, and Suryadev came, gazing down on him, and gave his blessings. All the demigods assembled, and Vishwamitra appeared before Harishchandra right then and there. He said, "Look, Harishchandra, I'll give you back your son and your wife and everything, your wealth and power, on one condition. You marry the two girls that I sent you." And Harishchandra said, "You know what? I'm not going to fall for this temptation. I'm not going to marry them. I'm sorry. If that means I have to kill my wife, so be it." And just as the blade was about to touch the neck, Lord Shiva appeared, Lord Vishnu appeared, Lord Brahma appeared, and they blessed Harishchandra. They revived his dead son, and Vishwamitra came. He offered his obeisances before the Lord and before Harishchandra and said that, "Okay, I'm thoroughly defeated." So it turns out that the Brahmana was an illusory, evil Brahmana created by Vishwamitra. And, the Virabahu was actually Yama, Lord of Death, or Yamaraj, Dharmaraj. So Harishchandra had won the challenge, and he proved that he was indeed a man of his word. Quite a graphic story. So it's a story about how a person thoroughly gave up his deceptive mentality. The beginning part, you hear how he's kind of deceived Varuna, but he gave up completely. So for anyone to abandon this, this quality of being deceptive is a monumental accomplishment. A person who's thoroughly honest is known as sadhu. In the Bhagavatam verse, it says, Srinvanti Gayanti Grananti Sadhava. That these literatures are accepted by those who are thoroughly honest. Krishna also accepts this, he explained this word sadhu in Bhagavad Gita 9:30. He says, Sadhureva samantavya. That even though apiche sudaracharo, even if somebody does something very abominable, but if he's rightly situated in his determination, then he's considered to be sadhu. So this deception, when we come out of it, that is a big win. In fact, that is the biggest project. When the material creation takes place, do you know what is the foundational ingredient? Like in a building, when you're building a concrete building, the foundation is made of stones and concrete, and they put these drivers of steel in it. It's extremely strong. It's what keeps the building standing. The material creation we read in the Bhagavatam, one of the foundational ingredients is self-deception. Yes. Self-deception is what this entire cosmic manifestation is standing on. Our material situation is standing on that self-deception. And if we can overcome by the process of Krishna consciousness and the purification of the heart and the association of progressive devotees and the blessings of the lineage of spiritual masters, and the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we can, in fact, overcome this self-deception. And that is how it works. We can even become purified to the point where nothing matters anymore other than Krishna. So that is the takeaway from today's story. Krishna mentioned this story, just the name, one word, Harishchandra, but it is so famously known. I mean, I just gave a very short version of it. There's a lot more tragic and graphic details in the story. It's found in many Puranas, Markandeya Purana. It's also found in Mahabharata, the story. If anybody who's known to be truthful and honest, he says, oh yeah, he's a Harishchandra, so that's how famous he is. So if we can be truthful and honest, then our path to success is assured, and we can maintain this sadhutva. Now, just because someone made a mistake in deception doesn't mean that there's no hope for him. If we're determined to come out of the cycle of self-deception or deceiving others, that determination will be a saving grace. Utsaha, nishchaya, dhairya. The nishchaya means determination. Utsaha means enthusiasm, and dhairya means patience. If we have those three strongly cultivated on a daily basis, then it's said that success in spiritual life is guaranteed. There's three more. Utsaha, nishchaya, dhairya, tat karma pravartana, sangatyaga sato vritti. So those are 6 items. So thank you very much for your time. It's 7:50 now. Hare Krishna. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna, I have a question.
Hand is up.
I have a question.
Okay. Who is speaking? I'm not seeing this.
Krishna Kumari.
All right. Okay. Yeah. William, Jamana Jay, and Vanisha had their hands up. Go ahead. Why don't you go ahead, Krishna Kumari? That's good.
Oh, so sorry. I didn't see the hands. I have a question about this part about the debt. I've heard in the Christian lineage, nobody was ever supposed to lend money and have them have to pay back interest. So I was just wondering if there was any message in this tale about how we are today in this world with the whole banking system and what the message is with that.
So it's a good point. There's a reason why in the Christian and Abrahamic traditions, and even in the Vedic tradition, it is considered sinful to charge interest. There's a word for it. It's called usury. Usury, U-S-U-R-Y. And the reason why it's considered sinful, whether Islamic or Hindu background, Vedic or Christian, is because it's that's how people prey on people's vulnerabilities. That's why bankers are universally detested for doing that. Even today, there's protests outside banks. I work for a bank, and this protest I see outside there. It's the whole system is really bad. So, and this is an example of how someone who's in debt can be driven to such extreme misery. So that's the point for that. It is all connected. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay. Yes, William Prabhu, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for a wonderful class. I have a question. I wrote some of it in the chat. Don't want to confuse you because I ramble on sometimes and lose my thought. Like a butterfly, I always reach my destination though. Let's see. Okay. So in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 27, the Apostle Paul's writing to the Corinthians. He says, I pummel my body and lead it as a slave, so that I may not be disqualified. I see a connection with Krishna's writings, where we're fighting Maya every day, but Maya is not evil. Maya is she's a friend. She's trying to help us reach Godhead. It's my belief. I shouldn't say it's my belief. Hold on. Okay, so I guess the question is, maybe she's not bad. Just a servant of Krishna, right? Sorry, I'm straying off the subject. Here's the question. Okay, yesterday I walked into a bar. This is not a bar joke. This is not a bar joke. Yesterday I walked into a bar near 2nd Avenue Temple, and I began preaching there, right? And the owner of the bar respectfully said, Come back anytime. I got you. Don't worry about it. I told him, listen, I've been sober for 6 months. I haven't, and I lied. I lied to him. But you know what he did? He says, you're not drinking tonight. He says, you're not drinking tonight because you were honest with me. So I want to do something for you. I'm going to pay for anything you need. Just come back. So I'm going to preach some more. But first, I want to know respectfully, is it an offense to walk into a bar and preach?
Okay. The answer is no, it's not an offense to walk into a bar and preach. In fact, Nityananda Prabhu told Haridas to do just precisely that. He'd go in the markets and people will be drunk over there, and he preached to them, preached to the drunkards. So definitely not. In fact, if you've been to Gitanagari, we have these Radha Damodar deities there. The Radha Damodar deities, they would actually take them, the devotees would carry them on a platform and walk around the town with them, giving people mercy. And occasionally they'd walk into bars with the deities and they'd
Wow.
try to preach to them.
Honey,
So I'm not sure if that's bona fide, but they did it. The idea was that they did in the mood of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that just go around, give mercy to everybody. Generally not recommended if we're also trying to recover, from certain addictions. So that's also something to be careful of. But if we have company with us of devotees and stuff like that, then it's certainly not a problem. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Okay, Vanisha Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Two things. One, could you give some examples? Can you hear me okay? I have my headphones
Yes.
on. So okay. Could you give some examples maybe of more pernicious type of self-deception that we may not be aware of as aspiring devotees? That's the first part. Maybe I'll just pause there.
Yeah, this is a very good question. Very good question. What is self-deception? So there are certainly many examples of self-deception, if we can think of some. Primarily, you can say is our assessment of our misassessment of our own qualification or disqualification, right? Self-deception can come in the form of justification of not following the rules and regulations. Yeah, these things don't apply to me. It's fine. Or I can get away with something, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita towards the end, right? Surrender unto me. And in the purport, Prabhupada explains the elements of surrender. Elements of surrender are giving up everything that is not favorable to Krishna consciousness and taking up everything that is favorable to Krishna, all the practices, right? So when it comes to giving up things that are not favorable to our Krishna consciousness, it's actually very difficult to do. Our existence in this material journey, I'm talking trillions of lifetimes, it's basically a series of episodes of falling off the wagon, if you will, one after another. It's never so many times in a lifetime, So we deceive ourselves when we think that, yes, I am surrendered, but I can get away with these other things that I'm still continuing doing. That's why Prabhupada was very strict, that, at least follow his 4 regulative principles and also work toward improving ourselves on the subtle plane, be more honest, be more clear. He said, be plain, don't be deceptive, don't deceive others, because the only person you can deceive is yourself. So when you try to deceive others, we end up losing. So there's several elements of it. One is that we justify our bad behavior. We justify we kind of resent the principle behind it, you see. If you have an inner resentment of the principle, say behind following regular principles, then our progress is very slow. But say we are not able to follow the regulative principles, but we're not resentful of them. We aspire to reach the level, right? We aspire to reach the level of honesty that's required for Krishna conscious progress, while recognizing our weaknesses. Then that is not deceptive. That's we've cleared it. Krishna mentions, Prabhupada mentions that in the purports in Bhagavad Gita, that as long as one is not resentful of the principle, then the path to Krishna consciousness is clear. You see. So on one hand, you have one person who claims to be a devotee, but has absolutely no intention of overcoming the lower instincts, the lower activities, because he doesn't feel that it warrants it. You know, so that is one example of self-deception that we tend to do. You know, for a simple example of, say, cheating in exams, like, you know, when kids cheat an exam, and the teacher says you should not cheat an exam because the only person you're cheating is yourself. Eventually, it'll come out that you're not that smart, but study hard and do better. And don't be lazy. So the child may think he's cheating somebody else, but actually he's cheating himself out of a bright future. So similarly, we may think that we've deceived somebody else, but really we're only weakening our own future. So that's some examples.
Just super quickly, you said, and thank you for that, enthusiasm, determination, and patience. And you said there were three more, but then you didn't say the English.
Yes. So that's found in that's found in Nectar of Instruction. It is Nectar of Instruction as a verse by Rupa Goswami. Utsaha Nishchaya Dhairya, first three. Then Tattat Karma Pravartanat Sangatyaga Satovrite. Tattat Karma Pravartanat means following the regulative principles of bhakti, which is hearing, chanting, etc. Sangatyagat, giving up the association of non-devotionally inclined people. Yeah. And then Satovrite, following the footsteps of the great acharyas. You know, if you have any questions, you follow in their footsteps.
Thank you.
Those are the 6 items. And if you follow all 6, he says the success in spiritual life is guaranteed. Like there's absolute, no chance of failure. So the conch shell is about to blow. Thank you very much. Ishirada Muralidhar ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Madana-gopāla Prabhu, thank you. Again, wonderful class, wonderful story, wonderful purport, takeaways. I have 2 questions. When we forget something and fail to keep our promise just because we forget, is that cheating? And then the second question is, are there any examples in the Shastra of justified cheating? Ashvatthama's death, maybe. Is there such a thing in Shastra, bona fide cheating? And who can do it?
Yes, it's a good question. So your first question is, if we forget something, is it a cheating? So
I promised my wife to wash the dishes, and then I forgot, and then she landed on me in the morning. You never keep your promise. It's just an example. It's not about me. It's not me. It's William.
Yes. I'm just mesmerized by the lights that William has. You know, I'm just like, wow. He's partying all day and night over there.
Yeah.
Krishna's presence. Like the disco never ends, you know?
Yeah. That's the bar he went to.
That's yeah. You know, this it's a celebration everywhere. But it's so when we forget. It's a good question, and it's actually very it's a lot more complicated than it could be very complicated, because then you may ask, why do I forget? Why do I have a tendency to forget things like doing the dishes? Because maybe I'm fundamentally lazy, and so I use that as an excuse. So
that's because of Krishna. Krishna says he's the source of forgetfulness.
Krishna says, from me comes forgetfulness, right? But it is not that Krishna wants you to forget. Krishna sanctions your desire to forget. Two different things. So you can't blame Krishna. Hey, Krishna made me forget. You know, this is one of the things of self-deception that Manisha was asking about. Either Krishna, you're super powerful, you created the circumstance, the situation, plus you make me forget. You should have made me remember. Or another tradition is the devil made me do it. You know, so this idea of escaping responsibility is really one of the core aspects of self-deception, trying to shift blame and trying to escape responsibility. So yes, if I forgot something, if a genuine mistake, and because we are human, we do tend to make mistakes, right? So we beg the Lord for forgiveness, and we intensify our desire to be, in our determination to be more careful next time, genuinely, and do something about it. You know, so if we do something about it to that degree, Krishna reciprocates. Krishna reciprocates with our determination, which is why the intensity is required. You know, he reciprocates with how focused we are in our determination. If our determination also weak, then his reciprocation will be similarly, you know, corresponding, right? So certainly we could make that case. Now, your other question was about examples of cheating that are bona fide. So yes, and the example you gave was a good one. What is it that makes someone truthful? Is it okay to say a white lie? Is it okay to, it's a bona fide cheating, right? Is it okay to cheat somebody out of their money if my livelihood depends on it? Isn't all business some sort of cheating anyway? Engage in business, engage in some kind of work. There is some sort of, you know, deception. There's always some element of deception in advertising. Buy this product, you'll be ultimately happy. Hey, wait a minute. I bought that product and I'm just utterly miserable. Like, you know, I got a whole case of smart water. I drank the whole thing. I'm still as dumb as a bag of brass doorknobs. It didn't work, you know. Or I got this whole pallet of, this Girl Scout cookies called Thin Mints, and I didn't get any thinner. It just kept getting fatter. So this is like false advertising. There's deception in almost everything that's being done in this world. So is that bona fide? You see, we're advertising. Is it bona fide? So the answer is yes and no. Like, wait a minute. Because depending on your varna, you have different dharmas. For example, a Brahmana is not allowed to lie, but a Vaishya is allowed to lie, to deceive, because his livelihood depends on it. But it has to be, you know, not a very damaging lie. It has to be, you know, semi-victimless crime, because you have to sell business. Oh, you know, for you, I'm going to sell you these bangles. I'm going to make no profit for you because you're such a good friend of mine. But I'm making 300% profit. Doesn't matter for you. So it makes you feel good. Hey, it's no one's getting hurt. You're happy you got it for a good deal. You think you got a good deal. I'm making good profit. You know, what's the big deal? It's not a big deal. Vaishya's livelihood depends on it. The whole system works on that. And it's fine. They're allowed. Brahmanas are not. Therefore, Brahmanas are poor. You see, Kshatriya is also not allowed to lie, but they're allowed to fight. They're allowed to use violence. Of course, within the certain dharmic guidelines, you see. So depending on varna and your ashram and stuff like that, there are allowances for what is considered bona fide or what is considered okay. So one person, you know, is allowed to do this. Some things the sannyasis cannot do, grihasthas can do, and so on. So there's a slew of dharmas around it. But the ultimate dharma is, does it please the Supreme Lord, what I'm doing? If the Supreme Lord asks me to lie for him and I hesitate, then my chariot will touch the ground. That's what happened to Yudhishthir. Yudhishthir, the moment Yudhishthir was so pure in his truthfulness that when he got on the chariot would go a few inches above the ground. That's how pure he was. He had never told a lie in his life. And after he told the Ashwatthama lie, his chariot touched the ground. Not because he told the lie. His chariot touched the ground because he hesitated when Krishna told him to tell a lie, and he didn't do it right away. He doubted Krishna. That's the reason, you see. So the point is that if we do something that's pleasing to Krishna, of course, it has to be within reason. It has to be within the guideline of the spiritual master. So we have to be very, very careful in applying this. Best is to just be thoroughly honest. Become famous for being an honest person. You know, maybe we can aim for that. From now on, I'm going to be famous. I want to be a Harishchandra. People should see me and should think of Harishchandra. You know, that he will never tell a lie. Of all things, this is a person, you know, he's straightforward, he's truthful. That if we make an honest living, we'll be respected, you know. So if we are honest, and Sadhu, Krishna says, Sadhava, right? That verse from the Bhagavatam, Shinvanti, Gayanti, Grananti, Sadhava. And Prabhupada translates that as thoroughly honest. So if you're honest in everything, then we can even revel in Krishna's lies and relish them. Krishna tells Mother Yashoda, Naham bhakshitavanam ba sarve mithyabhi samshitah. Yeah. Yadi satyas giram pashyame. He said pashyame mukham. So he tells Mother Yashoda, I did not eat the dirt, Mother Yashoda. All these people, Balram and all my friends, they're lying. And if you don't believe me, come and look in my mouth. Come closer and open it. Krishna is saying, Krishna, who is the absolute truth, is saying a bald-faced lie. He has dirt all over his lips, but he's telling that Balaram and all the other boys are liars. And you know what? We relish it. We love it. We see the cuteness of the Lord. And we glorify it. Because the Lord is absolute. Absolute truth means even if he lies, that's absolute numbers, right? Even if it's a negative number, absolute means it turns positive. So that's the sweetness of the Lord. But we are not encouraged or really allowed to be liars, where the game is to be deceitful, to exploit somebody, to get something for nothing, and so on.
Wow. So much nectar and wisdom. Can I ask a burn and follow-up question, Madana-gopāla Prabhu?
Of course.
For telling the truth, are there any guidelines in the Shastra for telling the truth? In other words, can we bash people with the truth? Can we tell truth in the wrong time to the wrong person in the wrong circumstance and do a disservice by telling truth in such a way?
Yes, of course. So we've heard that when we speak something, it has to be truthful. It has to be palatable. It also has to be there. It has to be kind, and it has to have a higher purpose. It has to have a purpose that is uplifting. There are many truths that are better left unspoken if it doesn't have a redeeming value of saying it. You know? Like, appreciate when someone holds back the truth about how I look. They don't have to tell me everything about
Come on, Madana-gopāla.
you know? Or, for example, right? It's fine. I appreciate it. So I don't need to hear everything. It has to be uplifting. It has to be encouraging, and so on. You know, there has to be some value. Otherwise, there's so much truth out there. We don't have to go speaking it. We just have to speak what's beneficial. It has to be beneficial. It has to be kind. It has to be palatable. It has to be truthful. You know, so those are the criteria Krishna gives us. This is how we speak. This is from the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna writes, speaks this, how to speak in more goodness and so on.
And what if someone takes an offense when you tell them the truth? Is it their ignorance, or it's my lack of discernment here?
Yeah, that's a good question. Of course, this question will vary from situation to situation, which is why it says it has to be palatable. Palatable means the least offensive way possible. Some of us are expert at saying something the most offensive way possible. Like, how are you so expert? Like everything you say is like, encased with insults left and right. They're very truthful, but it's just insultive. And it's an expertise that comes with practice. Krishna describes such people in the Bhagavad Gita, those who are expert at insulting. Everything is there in the Bhagavad Gita, you'll find it. He mentioned about experts at insult. Those who are just, they just come so naturally to them because they've been doing it so much. So if somebody gets offended at the truth, it all depends on the circumstance. We try not to offend somebody. It's not our goal to offend anybody. Certainly not to offend devotees. And then there are those who are expert at taking offense at everything. Like even if you're helping them and praising them, they'll take it the wrong way and they'll take offense. There's not much you can do about that. And then you have to clarify, no, that's not what I meant. It's the good kind of fat, whatever, right? So we just take, we take offense very easily. We're very expert. But it's in this world, it's almost impossible to escape miscommunication, misunderstanding, and misperception. And usually it's a comedy of those three things that causes havoc in our life: miscommunication, misunderstanding, and our own misperception. And you weave those three threads into these thick ropes and we can hang ourselves on it. So we just have to be very careful, and just, if we're known to be thoroughly honest, then our level of trust goes up, and then people will give us the benefit of doubt. No, I don't think he meant it that way. That's not his personality.
That's a good one. Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Madana-gopāla Prabhu. Such wonderful handling of those questions. You're such a balanced Vaishnava. Thank you. We're not afraid of asking questions to you. Okay.
Well, right. Thank you all very much.
Hari Purush Prabhu has
Prabhu is giving his blessings, his 3 fingers like this. Thank you, Prabhu, for your blessings. Haribol. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Hari Purush. Thank you, and Bihari Prabhu and all devotees for joining, and we'll see you next time. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. Madana-gopāla Prabhu ki jai.